where do the poorest people in the world live? According to estimates from the World Bank, sub-Saharan Africa is the highest concentration of people living in extreme poverty, on less than $1.25 a day.
Absolute or extreme poverty is living at or below $1.25 a day, according to the World Bank. Over the last 30 years, worldwide poverty has fallen dramatically, dropping from about 40% to under 20% of people in the globe living in poverty. Although we have seen this sharp drop throughout the world, the absolute poverty in Africa has barely moved. Still today, 47% of people living in Africa, or 415 million people, are living in absolute poverty as of 2011. The people of Africa have been living in poverty ever since the first British African colonies were established in a process of colonialism, and during all of the colonial rule from 1880 to 1965. There are many different factors that have led to the poverty in Africa today, including corruption and poor governance, diseases, especially malaria and HIV/AIDS, poor health facilities, poor infrastructure, geographical situation, distribution of resources, lack of education, environmental degradation, poor land utilization, and most importantly, inequality. Michael Sata, the former president of Zambia, said, "God gave copper to Zambia. These mining industries export and we don't know what they're doing with our money." This shows that although there's an abundance of resources in some of these African countries, they are still poor because all of the money and resources are being sent outside of the country or to only a selected few within the country. Another cause of poverty could be the dependency theory. The dependency theory is used to explain the failure of non-industrialized countries to develop economically in spite of investments from industrialized countries. The extreme poverty in Africa has led to hunger, a lack of access to clean drinking water, and poor sanitation, which enables the spread of diseases. These all help contribute to a higher crude death rate. In rural communities all across sub-Saharan Africa, hundreds of millions of people do not have access to clean, safe water. Every day, they bear the burden of having to walk many miles just so they can gather water from the streams and ponds that most of the time contains waterborne diseases that makes them and everybody else sick. The sicknesses received from drinking the water and the time lost getting it every single day robs families and entire communities of their future. Hunger is spreading in Africa like a wildfire in a forest. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest prevalence of hunger in the world, with every 1 in 4 people being chronically undernourished. Our globe has more than enough food for everyone on it. The problem, though, is that the people who are going hungry are trapped in absolute poverty. They lack the money to buy enough food to nourish and take care of themselves and their families. As they are constantly malnourished, they become weaker and weaker and even sick. This makes them increasingly less able to work, making them poorer and hungrier. Sadly, this downward spiral can eventually lead to death. Poor nutrition in the first 1,000 days of a child's life can lead to stunted growth, which is irreversible and limits their physical and mental growth, locking them in poverty. Sub-Saharan Africa has the most serious HIV/AIDS epidemic in the world. Today, there are roughly 24.8 million people that are HIV positive in Africa, which accounts for 70% of the global total of infected people. African populations are also dramatically affected by malaria. Malaria is a vector disease that is caused by blood parasites transmitted from person to person through the bites of infected mosquitoes. In 2013, malaria caused an estimated 584,000 deaths, mostly among African children. HIV/AIDS and malaria could be prevented, but because of the poverty in Africa, they have poor sanitation and not enough money to get vaccines or any other source of prevention. This has enabled these epidemics to become unstoppable. The closer we get to ending extreme poverty, the harder it is going to be to do it. We're going to have to end violent conflicts, sustain high economic growth, and avoid any recession in the poor countries, making sure that nobody's income drops below $1.25 a day. Reducing poverty would potentially cost some of the world's biggest businesses billions of dollars and need to be agreed on by a group of world leaders. Many situations have also shown that foreign aid is not helping the economies of these African countries grow. Herman Chinnery Hesse, a Ghanaian entrepreneur, explained this perfectly.
There are situations where I've set up a business deal, I'm about to do a trade, to sell something to a community, I've made an investment, and NGOs will hear about it. They find a way to bring aid money and provide it for free. So what happens to my investment? I have to lay off my staff. To a large extent, our governments have been held captive by the donor agencies, the international donor community, who are not, in my view, particularly interested in seeing the growth of local business.
Most people would say that the first step to eliminating poverty in Africa would be a strong governance and leadership. A government that could critically tackle the issue of unemployment, welfare, social infrastructures, and corruption. This is followed closely by education. The financial poverty is a part of the cultural poverty in Africa, for which education is the only cure. If cultural poverty is aided with education, financial poverty will decrease as well. TheGuardian.com suggests that social safety nets are the antidote to extreme poverty. Social safety nets are programs designed to provide a floor of protection to the poor and to cushion them from shocks, and they help reduce overall poverty. These transfers can come from donors, NGOs, or the state. There are also many organizations trying to spread the word of the poverty, hunger, and lack of access to clean drinking water in Africa, such as the Water Project, the Hunger Project, Charity Water, and Stop Hunger Now. These organizations are able to give these communities in Africa things they never even dreamed of.
I just want to become a nurse.
Tangira, I want to teach, become a nurse.